This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. What I Saw in America by G.K. Chesterton. Section 1, Chapter 1, Part 1. What is America? I have never managed to lose my old conviction that travel narrows the mind. At least a man must make a double effort of moral humility and imaginative energy to prevent it from narrowing his mind. Indeed, there is something touching and even tragic about the thought of the thoughtless tourist who might have stayed at home, loving Laplanders, embracing Chinamen, and clasping Patagonians to his heart in Hampstead or Surbiton, but for his blind and suicidal impulse to go and see what they looked like. This is not meant for nonsense. Still less is it meant for the silliest sort of nonsense, which is cynicism. The human bond that he feels at home is not an illusion. On the contrary, it is rather an inner reality. Man is inside all men. In a real sense, any man may be inside any men. But to travel is to leave the inside and draw dangerously near the outside. So long as he thought of men in the abstract, like naked toiling figures in some classic frieze, merely as those who labour and love their children and die, he was thinking the fundamental truth about them. But going to look at their unfamiliar manners and customs, he is inviting them to disguise themselves in fantastic masks and costumes. Many modern internationalists talk as if men of different nationalities had only to meet and mix and understand each other. In reality, this is the moment of supreme danger, the moment when they meet. We might shiver as at the old euphemism by which a meeting meant a duel. Travel ought to combine amusement with instruction, but most travellers are so much amused that they refuse to be instructed. I do not blame them for being amused. It is perfectly natural to be amused at a Dutchman for being Dutch, or a Chinaman for being Chinese. Where they are wrong is that they take their own amusement seriously. They base on it their serious ideas of international instruction. It was said that the Englishman takes his pleasures sadly, and the pleasure of despising foreigners is one which he takes most sadly of all. He comes to scoff, and does not remain to pray, but rather to excommunicate. Hence, in international relations there is far too little laughing and far too much sneering. But I believe there is a better way, which largely consists of laughter, a form of friendship between nations which is actually founded on differences. To hint at some such better way is the only excuse of this book. Let me begin my American impressions with two impressions I had before I went to America. One was an incident and the other an idea, and when taken together they illustrate the attitude I mean. The first principle is that nobody should be ashamed of thinking a thing funny because it is foreign. The second is that he should be ashamed of thinking it wrong because it is funny. The reaction of his senses and superficial habits of mind against something new and to him abnormal is a perfectly healthy reaction. But the mind which imagines that mere unfamiliarity can possibly prove anything about inferiority is a very inadequate mind. It is inadequate even in criticizing things that may really be inferior to the things involved here. It is far better to laugh at a Negro for having a black face than to sneer at him for having a sloping skull. It is proportionally even more preferable to laugh rather than judge in dealing with highly civilized peoples. Therefore, I put at the beginning two working examples of what I felt about America before I saw it, the sort of thing that a man has a right to enjoy as a joke, and the sort of thing he has a duty to understand and respect because it is the explanation of the joke. When I went to the American consulate to regularize my passports, I was capable of expecting the American consulate to be American. Embassies and consulates are by tradition like islands of the soil for which they stand, and I have often found the tradition corresponding to a truth. I have seen the unmistakable French official living on omelettes and a little wine, and serving his sacred abstractions under the last palm trees fringing a desert. In the heat and noise of quarrelling Turks and Egyptians, I have come suddenly, as with the cool shock of his own shower bath, on the listless amiability of the English gentleman. The officials I interviewed were very American, especially in being very polite. For whatever may have been the mood or meaning of Martin Chuzzlewit, I have always found Americans by far the politest people in the world. They put in my hands a form to be filled up, to all appearance like other forms I had filled up in other passport offices. But in reality it was very different from any form I had ever filled up in my life. At least it was a little like a freer form of the game called Confessions, which my friends and I invented in our youth. An examination paper containing questions like, if you saw a rhinoceros in the front garden, what would you do? One of my friends, I remember, wrote, take the pledge. But that is another story, and might bring Mr. Pussyfoot Johnson on the scene before his time. One of the questions on the paper was, are you an anarchist? To which a detached philosopher would naturally feel inclined to answer, what the devil has that to do with you? Are you an atheist? Along with some playful efforts to cross-examine the official about what constitutes a Greek arch. Then there was the question, are you in favour of subverting the government of the United States by force? Against this I should write, I prefer to answer that question at the end of my tour and not the beginning. The Inquisitor, in his more than morbid curiosity, had then written down, are you a polygamist? The answer to this is, no such luck, or not such a fool, according to our experience of the other sex. But perhaps a better answer would be that given by W. T. Stead when he circulated the rhetorical question, shall I slay my brother Boer? The answer that ran, never interfere in family matters. But among many things that amused me most to the point of treating the form thus disrespectfully, the most amusing was the thought of the ruthless outlaw who should feel compelled to treat it respectfully. I like to think of the foreign desperado seeking to slip into America with official papers under official protection, and sitting down to write with a beautiful gravity, I am an anarchist, I hate you all and wish to destroy you. Or I intend to subvert by force the government of the United States as soon as possible, sticking the long sheath knife in my left trouser pocket into Mr. Harding at the earliest opportunity. Or again, yes, I am a polygamist all right, and my 47 wives are accompanying me on the voyage, disguised as secretaries. There seems to be a certain simplicity of mind about these answers, and it is reassuring to know that anarchists and polygamists are so pure and good that the police have only to ask them questions, and they're certain to tell no lies. Now that is a model of the sort of foreign practice, founded on foreign problems, at which a man's first impulse is naturally to laugh. Nor have I any intention of apologizing for my laughter. A man is perfectly entitled to laugh at a thing because he happens to find it incomprehensible. What he has no right to do is laugh at it as incomprehensible, and then criticize it as if he comprehended it. The very fact of its unfamiliarity and mystery ought to set him thinking about the deeper causes that make people so different from himself, and that without merely assuming that they must be inferior to himself. Superficially, this is rather a queer business. It would be easy enough to suggest that in this America has introduced a quite abnormal spirit of inquisition, an interference with liberty unknown among all the ancient despotisms and aristocracies. About that there will be something to be said later, but superficially it is true that this degree of officialism is comparatively unique. In a journey which I took only the year before, I had occasion to have my papers passed by governments which many worthy people in the West would vaguely identify with corsairs and assassins. I have stood on the other side of Jordan, and in the land ruled by the rude Arab chief, where the police looked so like brigands that one wondered what the brigands looked like. But they did not ask me whether I had come to subvert the powers of Sharif. They did not exhibit the faintest curiosity about my personal views on the ethical basis of civil authority. These ministers of ancient Moslem despotism did not care about whether